the old, worn notebook I pulled from my desk drawer. My stomach clenched the moment I saw the blood-red stain on the first page. That stain was more than just blood. It was an oath. I will make that man pay. This was not merely a desire for vengeance. It was my Adel manifesto for survival. Years have passed, yet the bitter taste of that day's humiliation is still fresh on my tongue. If you were in my shoes, how would you plot against someone who ruined your life? Who publicly disgraced you during your most vulnerable moment? Would you forget him? Or would you target the one thing he held most dear? I am Adel, now an assistant teacher in a prestigious university's literature department. But 10 years ago, in those high school hallways, I was a student Professor Elias Thorne mocked and cornered the most. Thorne, every time I hear that name, the scene replays in my mind that sunny, wretched Tuesday, tearing up my essay in the middle of the class and declaring, "Adel, this is nothing but a waste of paper. You will never be a writer." The class's laughter, the scorching heat I felt on my cheeks. Something broke inside me at that moment, and the first seeds of vengeance fell into the soil with those laughs. He killed my dream. Now, it was my turn. For years, I grew up in his shadow. I used knowledge as a shield and intellect as a dagger. My goal was to enter this very school, the one he graduated from, the one he taught at. I started as a student, graduating with top honors. Then, in an incredible twist of irony, I accepted an assistant position right beside him. Every day, I sat across his desk, playing the role of his successful former student. Every smile accelerated the flow of the cold river within me. But my revenge wouldn't be simple career sabotage. It would target the only thing he valued more than his own reputation. The critical point in Thorne's life was his daughter, Leila, a talented, brilliant art student. I saw her as a fragile flower, the exact opposite of Elias's cruelty. Leila became a student in one of my most difficult courses. Initially, I approached her only to gather information. I realized the strained yet profound bond between her and her father was the only crack in Elias's armor. As I got closer, I saw how thinly stretched like glass Leila was under her father's perfectionist pressure. Once, as she worked quietly in the studio, the smell of paint hung in the air. I noticed her brush trembling. "Your father's expectations are heavy, aren't they?" I asked. She didn't look at me, but the slight crack in her voice revealed all the pressure on her shoulders. This meant my revenge would affect not only Elias but Lila's life too. This made me uneasy. Would my victim be an innocent young girl, just like the person in my past? A chilling wind of conscience swept through me. Curiosity gap. It would have been easy to bring down Elias Thorne with a plagiarism scandal. At the peak of his career, he had so many enemies. But I planned to hit him where he was most vulnerable, shattering the flawless image. Leila held of her father as a hero. Could I truly do it? Using the trust Leila had placed in me made my revenge more satisfying, yet also more despicable. One evening, I was going through the drafts of Elias's latest book in his office. As a former student, I was helping him. The room was filled with the scent of old leather and stale coffee. I was searching for his biggest secret, and I found it. Tucked between the book drafts, a half-finished poem cut from an old magazine. It was signed by another name, Vera, and scribbled on the margin in Elias's handwriting was a note. Even years later, "This remains my best." Suddenly, the door opened. Elias Thorne stood there, holding a steaming mug. As my heart pounded like a drum against my ribcage, I immediately slipped the notebook back among the drafts. "Adel, what are you doing here this late? Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice strangely soft. "Oh, Professor, just checking the citations in your new chapter. It's brilliant. Especially Vera's influence is quite noticeable," I said, forcing a smile as if I were drowning. "Where did you know Vera from?" Elias's face went completely white for a moment. The hard sound of the porcelain as he set the mug down echoed in the room. "Vera, an old colleague, talented. Why do you ask?" The panic in his eyes confirmed the roadmap for my revenge. This poem was the core idea of that famous, universally praised essay, the very cornerstone of his career. And the poem wasn't his. Now, I didn't just have a plan. I had a bomb in my hands. The climax of vengeance was approaching, the big night, when Elias was to receive the Educator of the Year award. Leila was scheduled to give a heartfelt speech about her father, and right before that speech I would deliver photocopies of that small, worn notebook and Vera's poem to the most inquisitive journalist. That night, the hall was dazzling under the bright light of the crystal chandeliers. The air was heavy with the smell of perfume and expensive wine. My duty was to prepare Elias's speech. During the final rehearsal, Elias was nervous. "Adel, is everything ready? Tonight will be my life's work. Ready, Professor. Down to the smallest detail," I whispered. But it was a lie. I had changed the final paragraph of the speech manuscript. The original was a cliché farewell where Elias praised himself. My version was a highly emotional final piece, a slightly altered quote from Vera's stolen poem, attributed to Leela. My goal was to make Elias light the fuse with his own hands before the bomb went off. Leela stepped onto the stage. The rustle of her purple velvet dress radiated from the microphone into the hall. Her eyes were filled with tears. The pure love for her father was evident on her face. My father, my inspiration. He taught me the power of words, she said. In that moment, the bitter-sweet mixture of revenge choked me. Did I have the right to inflict this pain on this innocent girl? In that instant, I felt vulnerable. My selfishness and anger were about to destroy her life. Then my eyes caught Elias Thorne. His chest puffed with pride, his face tense with arrogance. And suddenly, the sound of those old laughs echoed in my ears again. That scorching heat returned. There was no turning back. Leela finished her speech. Elias took the stage. Midway through his speech, it was time for the last paragraph. Looking down at the paper in his hand, he paused. He looked at me. I saw a momentary surprise and horror in his eyes. His voice began to tremble as he read the paragraph. The hall was filled with the strange tension of silence. My dear daughter, Leela, my art has always been your work. Just as in these lines, and he read the lines, the stolen poem I had modified. Leela first smiled in surprise. Then, she must have remembered the poem from somewhere, and the smile on her face turned into a pale mask. Immediately after, flashes started going off from the back rows of the hall. The journalist held up Vera's original poem, shouting, "Professor Thorne, don't these lines belong to Vera? Are you even saying goodbye to your own daughter with a plagiarized work?" Elias's face completely collapsed. All that arrogance vanished in an instant. It was as if his heart had stopped. As Leela looked at her father, the innocence in her eyes shattered instantly. This was the climax of my revenge. I had destroyed not only his career, but also his bond with his daughter. My revenge was not limited to just one teacher. That vengeance overturned the entire structure of a life. Now Elias Thorne stands on that podium, a broken hero. Leela looks at her father, and I, Adel, stand at the edge of my desk, looking at the notebook that is now completely empty. But what now? I took my revenge. There is no more feeling of vengeance. All that remains is a high-tension void. Will Elias Thorne come after me after this scandal? Or will he try to repair his relationship with his daughter? And more importantly, if Leela decides to stand against her father after all this destruction, will she side with me? Or will she see me as a manipulator as ruthless as her father? As Elias Thorne slowly descended from the podium, we met eyes. There was neither anger nor remorse on his face, only a pure, soulless recognition. He whispered, his voice almost lost in the chaos of the hall. What was I expecting? You will always be a disaster, Adel. But I know the real disaster has yet to begin. That last, shaky look Leela gave me lit the fuse for the next conflict. That look asked me one question. Why did you do it? Do you think I should tell her the truth? Or should I use her as the next instrument of my bitter revenge?